Welcome to the PFF forecast. We waited an extra day so that we could do two things. The first is record a podcast right after my national champion loss in the first round and have a better sense of what free agency looked like, get a little bit more on the Rodgers situation, which we will talk about here, what the trade compensation might look like. We're going to do winners and losers, both team and player, contract and scheme fit. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the rumors or conversation around Bryce Young being somehow involved with Carolina, what we understand about that situation. And then close out with not anything that I'm going to bet on March Madness, but maybe these two guys, Seth and Brad, have a little bit better of a feel than I do. Let's rock. I cannot emphasize this enough. College basketball is just such a complete shit show. My God.
Watching the people are going to get a beautiful, unique opportunity to see George's bracket get busted in real time. I guess it won't be real time, but it'll be a little bit delayed. But, it's a fun product, a wild product. We already saw Furman after the Zach Wilson-esque pass from Virginia over the middle. Gets picked off, and we had our first madness in the first couple hours of the tournament. That's what it's all about.
I already disparaged golfers last week, so I'd rather not say my thoughts on college basketball out loud right now.
Okay,
you're busy.
That's probably my thoughts on the Arizona Wildcats can also not be said on this podcast because then we would not make it up onto the platform. Okay, that was the college basketball section of the podcast. Let's talk a little bit about the Aaron Rodgers stuff. So I think the interesting question here is he's told everybody, but Adam Schefter, I guess, he wants to go to the Jets. They've already signed half his friends. And so it's an interesting situation now where, Brad, I'm curious, it seems to me that the Packers have some leverage here. They obviously have not worked out a trade yet. What do you think, or what do you know about the negotiation? Who do you think has the leverage? What do you think the deal looks like?
Yeah, in the weirdest way, they both have a lot of leverage and no leverage in that the Packers, of course, can just say, okay, well, we're not going to trade him to you. And now, you have no other option. Garoppolo is signed, all these things. You can just, take a quarterback at 13 or sign some, I don't even know who's left. Brissett signed, Minshew signed, Baker signed. There's really no one left on the table. But from the Jets' perspective, they could also say, okay, well, we know Aaron hates you guys now. He took a bunch of pot shots at you on the McAfee show saying you don't take care of your players, you're not honest, and you're not transparent with them. And he came out of the darkness and doesn't want to play for you anymore, or you don't want him to play for you. But he's petty enough that maybe he just says, okay, I'll show up to OTAs to collect my $60 million check, but just half-ass the entire season and just make things complicated with Jordan Love and from a financial standpoint. So it's like both teams are kind of in this weird position. I think the Packers eventually are going to have to acquiesce. It sounds like they want maybe a first this year and a quality pick next year. I think more likely it's you get one first round pick, whether it's this year or next year, and the other pick is kind of a throwaway. Like maybe you get a future, 2024 fourth or something that could become a third or a second. If Rodgers wins the Super Bowl, you put all right, it becomes a second round pick, it becomes a first, and maybe the Jets all right, that condition. If we win the Super Bowl, who cares what we give up to get Aaron Rodgers? So I think it still, of course, gets done. I think Rodgers signing off was the bigger holdup than anything. We've gotten that. He's confirmed that to us. He saw the light. He saw the Jet symbol in the darkness. And so we'll get there. I'm going to guess it's pick 13, and I'm going to say it's a conditional third in 2024 that becomes a second if they make the playoffs and a first if they make the AFC Championship game, win the AFC Championship game. That's what I'll say.
Wasn't the story though that he only made it 2 days in the darkness? So did he
ready to compete? Yeah.
So he's just so excited
once
about
he
joining.
Saw the sign, you're done. You can, once you saw the jet in the air, it's like Constantine. Once you saw the cross, it was over. It's Christianity all the way down. It's over.
Okay. So it's interesting. You would assume the difference in the Jets' mind between the first this year and the first next year is 15 picks or so, right?
Yes.
Because it's 13 this year. They probably think they're winning the Super Bowl next year. So that's like not an insignificant amount, to haggle over. I got to say, though, if I were the Packers, I would like do everything I could to get this year's.
No, I agree. You think you got to hold strong. You have to push for it, because I do, at the end of the day, still think they have a little bit more power in this conversation than the Jets do. Is Rodgers really going to just cause headaches and be a problem just because you don't trade him? I mean, maybe, but I don't know. So I agree. You want to take the known commodity, the 13th overall pick. I guess on the flip side, you could argue, look, yes, the Jets pick should be way better next year, but I don't know. Is the draft class viewed as much stronger next year versus this year? Possibly. So you can probably argue both ways, but yeah, I think pick 13 is probably the prize.
By the way, there are Jets. There's a Jets section on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. I'll throw some at you here, Seth. Regular season wins, they have it 9.5, over 9.5, -142, under +116. To make the playoffs, -162, yes, +132, no. Aaron Rodgers, regular season passing yards over 4,500 is the over under. Regular season passing TDs, -112 both sides, 29.5. Garrett Wilson, total receiving yards, 1,150.5. I'm just going to go under right away because he's going to throw Alan Lazard and Randall Cobb all year. But kind of interesting. I mean, I guess the question that I would have for you, Seth, before we talk about the betting angle, is how much he won back-to-back MVPs, kind of stunk last year, 76, 75.5 PFF grade, was supposedly injured. You think about you're a quarterback whisperer. So how much did the injury play a part? And do you think he's lost a step or is he going to be able to rebound in New York?
I think the injury thing is really interesting, because did the injury affect him? Probably yes. Injuries are going to affect older players more than they affect younger players going forward. And I say that with Drew Brees at the end. They're like, oh, well, at the end, his last year, he was injured, had the ribs. Okay, but there's a reason why he couldn't return after all these injuries, because he was 40. Aaron Rodgers is going to be 40. Or he's 39. He's going to be 40 at some point. I don't know when his birthday is. So that, to me, is super concerning. Now, obviously, if I'm the Jets, you do this trade, giving them pick 13. Honestly, I might even give them 2 first-round picks. If you're assuming it's pick 13 and pick 28 or something, you do it. I think you just have to give yourselves a chance. You're the Jets, right? You're the Jets here. But yeah, I think there's more. There's so much ammo when you want to point out reasons why this is not going to be the Rodgers that is going to be a Hall of Famer. It could be over. He wasn't good this year. There's no guarantee you bounce back at 39 years old. There just is no guarantee. His playmaking wasn't, I guess, what it was the past 2 years. I think that's something that really might not come back. So now you're taking away Davante Adams, a.k.a. a true tier 1 wide receiver. Garrett Wilson had a great rookie year. Nope, for sure. But is he going to be Davante Adams? Let's pump the brakes a bit. And you're taking away the playmaking. What's left here, right? What's left here? So still a lot of good. Not saying it's all bad. But every year you go forward without these type of players around him and traits that he has, it gets worse and worse. So I would probably bet on him not being as good as they want him to be. But like I said, I think you do this trade, 10 times out of 10 if you're the Jets.
I will say on that point, you're the Jets point, which is fair, always fair to just kind of point that out real quick. But I think an interesting thing for me is we talk a ton about the rookie contract window for the quarterback and how you can load up around it and spend all these things around it. I think we are getting to a point where in today's NFL, where movement is more likely, if you have a awesome, and look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when they bring in Tom Brady, if you have a bunch of super good players on value contracts at other positions, again, not defense, don't go all in if you have, but like stable. You have receivers, some defense because their defense is nasty. And other positions say we're also wasting this roster with a bunch of really good surplus value players by not bringing in a quarterback. Let's go out and explore those moves. Try to get that done. A Stafford for Goff swap. I know Stafford, wasn't perfect last year, but were you wasting that roster if you didn't go do something like that? I think we maybe see more of that, or it's like, hey, if there's a veteran out there, if there's a guy that you can get like a Rodgers in this, it's kind of a unique scenario, but there's probably always going to be some type of player in this realm, maybe looking to make a move in today's NFL. I think you can kind of argue, yeah, like you have Quinn, Sauce, Garrett Wilson, like all these guys, like don't blow that either.
I agree with you. And it's interesting. We talked about this. I can't remember which week it was where Rodgers got hurt. And that Sunday night, I was like, this is it. He's going to the Jets. Like, this is where, he should go. I think I actually did say the Jets. Someone could check the tape on that. But if you don't make this move, it's interesting. Like, their options if they don't get Aaron Rodgers are what? Like, that's why I think the Packers really have a lot of leverage here, because it's like, hey, look, we're rebuilding. It's Jordan Love, it's Christian Watson. Who knows if those players are even here, 3 years from now, we might rebuild again. Like, who knows? The Jets, if they don't hit here, are taking defensive rookie of the year, offensive, could have been offensive rookie of the year, great young players that you've mentioned as well. And building around them with absolutely nothing. There's no one else out there. Derek Carr isn't even a consolation prize. Jimmy G isn't a consolation prize. So like they have no options. What they can do, draft Tanner McKee. So I don't know. I do think they have some leverage there. Here are the odds right now for the AFC East. Buffalo Bills plus 125, New York Jets plus 230, Miami Dolphins plus 370, and New England Patriots. New England Patriots, who we're going to talk about free agency here, have just done an incredible job assembling league average at every single position, are 7-1. I will start here and say that I kind of like the Dolphins at plus 370. They go pick up Jalen Ramsey. Your point about Devontae Adams, not being there, Garrett Wilson, very good, but the Dolphins have a ton of talent. So I don't know, Brad, what do you think about those odds?
I think the Dolphins have quietly had a phenomenal offseason, even beyond, trading for Jalen Ramsey. I think getting David Long on a 2-year, $11 million deal is a great value add for them. I like bringing in Deshaun Elliott on a 1-year flyer, like just giving Vic Fangio so much, weaponry to use on that defense. And then, you have all those weapons on offense. You got Mike White in case things go bad with Tua Tagovailoa. I'm half kidding there, but I think it was important to get a decent backup, a guy that you can trust to win you 2 or 3 games if you do need to go that route. I think they are the bet. They're very interesting to me. You are betting on Tua Tagovailoa staying healthy, but if he does, I really do think they are a good bet here. And then, the Patriots have the most mid roster. Like, their entire roster is just mid from top to bottom. It's honestly impressive.
I think
they'll always have that free agency banner though to hang. Remember that the Judon free agency with Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. They'll always have that moment. Probably is that the best moment in Patriots history? That offseason, I think it might be. We'll debate later. Seth.
I tried to wrap my brain. I tried to galaxy brain why Jonnu Smith wasn't getting any snaps that first year. By week 3, I was like, okay, well, no, it's because against certain teams they like to play with 2 tight ends, but against these type of teams they only play 1 tight end. And I was like, oh no, they don't like this guy. That's what it comes down to. I think with the AFC East, it's a classic. Are you betting on the best roster, regardless of position, top to bottom? That would be the Dolphins over the Bills. Or are you betting on the freak at quarterback, right? And that's so the value is obviously on the Dolphins in that case. But Bills are a fascinating team going into the draft and going into next season to see if they can make a real roster to surround Josh Allen.
What do you think about Deontay Hardy going to Buffalo? Obviously a Saints guy. But what do you think about that move? And Connor McGovern's basically all they did, which they don't have a lot of money to do things. But what do you think about that move?
Yeah, I know. I've thought McGovern was a pretty solid player, so that's good. Hardy's a cool player. Does it add so much from an offensive perspective, probably it. I don't know how much these type of players move the needle. Like, I think he's great. Like, I loved having him on the Saints. It was fun to watch. I don't know how much these type of players move the needle. He's a good on special teams, so I will give him that. So I think, they needed a speed. You do need that type of player on your team. So I think it's a good look. I just don't know how much that does it change how I feel about, betting on them or anything. Not really.
Yeah.
It is interesting. And let's make that transition into winners and losers. By the way, if you, like me, do not spend your entire day obsessing over news in the NFL like Brad and Seth do, and you're trying to figure out what the hell happened during free agency, we have a website for you. It's called pff.com. You go check it out. There is so much easy to quickly consume content there. You can sound like you've been following this the whole time through. I was on a radio show because there's some radio places that haven't figured out that I don't have no idea what I'm talking about. And I went on there the other night, and they're asking me questions about the signings, and legitimately sounded like a poet on there just because I had Brad's analysis on free agency. Team by team grades are out, so you can see all of both signings, players that they've lost, additions and subtractions. So then it's a fantastic resource. Go get your PFF subscription. You get 20% off with the promo code Forecast, FORECAST, both on the app and on pff.com. Okay. Let's do some winners, and then we'll go to losers. So maybe we do a couple each here. I'll start with you, Brad, a team winner.
Yeah, team winner for me would be the Cleveland Browns. I think they've made 3 very good moves, with none of them being massive splashes, but addressing probably their biggest weaknesses on defense, and that is first getting Dalvin Tomlinson in there. Used to be a nose tackle in New York, played more 3-tech in Minnesota, but a guy you can move around. I think a guy Jim Schwartz will use in a lot of different ways and be very effective with. A very good run defender, if that's what you want him to be. And they were 31st among interior defenders last year in run defense grade, and I think just dead last in overall grade among that position group, or maybe Chicago. But so a very, very bad unit becomes a pretty good one with that addition there. And then my favorite, under the radar signing, maybe of the entire offseason, is Ogbo Okoronkwo, the edge rusher, who was great this past year in Houston. They get him for a 3-year, $19 million deal. One of those, I think, signings that, kind of no one really talks about. And then he has 7-8 sacks next year and looks phenomenal. And last but not least, getting safety Juan Thornhill in there. They cut John Johnson. You bring in Thornhill from the Kansas City Chiefs. So, 3 moves where none of them even signed for $15 million a year. But I think you dramatically improve your biggest weakness. You keep your center Ethan Pochich, and you don't lose much. I think they did exactly what they needed to do. And I think they are, it's a tough division, but I think they did what they needed to do to get back in the mix.
Yeah, I think the issue is still going to be run defense there. They got to do something there. They got to do something to stop the run on the interior. And all those guys are going to look great. Thornhill, Okoronkwo, they're going to look great on paper, but if they can't stop the run up the middle, then this defense is not very good.
Yeah. Seth, a winner from you. I know that goes against your religion, but try for us.
This is a classic winner that's actually not going to end up being very good, and that's the Atlanta Falcons. This is to me, it's the classic, they have so much cap space, and they go out and they sign a bunch of people and they re-sign some good players, and you're like, I like that guy, I like that guy, I like that guy, I like that guy, and then it's like, well, they also are going to start, a 4th round pick, a quarterback next year, and it's not going to look good, right? That's how this whole thing ends. But yeah, I mean, if Desmond Ridder is, and I really liked him coming out of the draft, but let's be honest, he was whatever he was, 3rd or 4th round pick. Looked okay in the 4 games he played. But Jonnu Smith, we just talked about him. You're hoping that he can refine whatever he did with Arthur Smith when they were together in Tennessee. Helps him be a little more versatile. We'll see. That's what we said about the Patriots. Onyemata, love him. 30 years old, so I don't know if he still has that same juice. But when he's been on, in the past for the Saints, outstanding pass rusher and run defender. Jesse Bates, we knew that he was always going to be a sought-after free agent. Helps him at safety. Caden Ellis, one of the more underrated linebackers, came in replaced Pete Warner when he was injured for the Saints, had a great season. And then you add Heineke, who gives you that playmaking ability once every 3 games. That's great. And like I said, the re-signings were pretty good with Lindstrom and McGarry. And, this was a really good offensive line last year. Lindstrom having this incredible breakout season. So like I said, it's like, I love all these names. I love spending the money. You have it. It's just, they're going to finish 5-13 or something.
It's important to spend that money now because, you gotta give yourself something to be proud of when you're 3-14. Okay, I have a winner that I want to get out of the way now because I don't think there'll be a winner by the time the offseason is done. This is the Dallas Cowboys. So I think great job. You gotten rid of Zeke. You didn't pay Tony Pollard a ton of money. You franchise tagged him. I love what they did with Stephon Gilmore. I think that building coverage that is got no weak points is a fantastic way to go. And in an NFC where, the teams are only getting worse. So, Rodgers going from NFC to AFC. So I really like what they're doing there. Leighton Vander Esch, they re-signed him. I don't think that's a significant move really in either direction. But I think that this is setting up for them to just take Bijan Robinson. So in the first round, which I think Bijan Robinson is going to be amazing. He's going to be fantastic. I think they're probably going to overpay quite a bit for him, but that's what it is. But I like what they've done so far. So I'm going to say that now because at some point I will hate on the Cowboys. It's just the way the script is written, guys. I don't make the rules.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I could see it. I'm definitely not going to go against it. I mean, I think you do see the market at running back has just been dramatic. It's like there's been a massive reset and teams are just not spending there. And I wonder if we do see it also in the draft or if it's more just we'll still draft guys early. We just don't want to, pay on the second contract. But yeah, the odds he's a Dallas Cowboy have certainly gone up in the last couple of days.
It's plus 550, the 2 favorites to draft Bijan Robinson. And the reason Arjun isn't here is because he's trying to control his emotions. The Dallas Cowboys plus 550 and the Los Angeles Chargers also plus 550. The Commanders 6-1, the Falcons 9-1. The Falcons are running back away, guys. The Buffalo Bills 12-1 and the Bengals also 12-1, which is fantastic stuff. Okay, Brad, do you have any other winners?
Yeah, a couple of the winners. So, I think just real quick, Cincinnati getting, Orlando Brown for 4 years, $64 million. You throw in the franchise tag from last year, and it's basically 5 years, $80 million for Orlando Brown when he could have had $595 from Kansas City's extension last year. So he kind of misplayed that a little bit. But Cincinnati capitalizes, jumps in, steals a good, maybe it's not great, but a very, very good left tackle from the Kansas City Chiefs. So I would definitely think they are a winner. Another big one for me, though, the Detroit Lions. And I know they're #OurLions. We've given them a lot of praise, but I think they've been winning in ways they did not in the past. We probably used to talk about them as winners in March when they would probably overspend and make a bunch of dumb moves. Instead, it was very small or mid-tier calculated decisions. But to get Cam Sutton and Emmanuel Mosley at corner, I think Mosley will be healthy. Your old pal in San Fran should be healthy by week 1. Got hurt, I think, in week 6. So it's been a long time now. And then just solidify Cam Sutton, inside-outside versatility, maybe play some nickel. When they're in nickel, maybe goes outside and base. I don't know what they're going to do there with Jeff Okudah, but nevertheless, just fix your biggest weakness, which was their secondary, their outside corners in particular, without going crazy. And then some smaller moves too. You bring back John Kaminsky, do some other things. So I think they've had a great offseason, and they're 2 top 20 picks. All that is still up on the table, but make impactful additions without going crazy. That's what they did.
Both guys, the Lions were the other winner that I had, and both corners who had over 70 PFF grades last year, to your point. But here's the takeaway that I had from that. We all kind of everyone's mocking corner to them. What this signals to me is we don't see corner as the only, that's not the only place we can go get corner. We can get corner in free agency. So I think it opens up as we look at some of the team to draft or this team will draft this position. I think it's something to watch out for. And I think quarterback's still in play there. Seth, go ahead.
I can't really put my finger on whether I love them so much, but I'll talk about the Bears because I think they're doing kind of the right things like you add DJ Moore, like you trade back, great. Getting a player involved in the trade back, I think is great. Getting a player that really fits what you need going forward in DJ Moore is great. Travis Homer is actually a really good pass protecting running back, probably one of the more underrated in that sense in the league. So that's going to help Justin Fields. Nate Davis, a good player. You want to beef up the offensive line, all these little things. The two linebackers in a vacuum, I think getting Tremaine Edwards, I know they paid a lot of money for him, but getting Tremaine Edwards and TJ Edwards, good. Two good linebackers, no problem with that. I think when you look at it in the context of, well, you had a great linebacker. Like you're getting two potentially good linebackers as opposed to you had a great linebacker. And you paid Tremaine Edmonds close to what Roquan Smith is getting paid now. So that's where it's like the issue. But I think, like I said, in a vacuum, it's two good players to fit on a defense that you need pretty much every position, right? So I do like what the Bears have done.
Yeah, it's a good call out. One that I would give an honorable mention to, I like what the Chiefs did. They could have, I think, easily felt pot committed on Orlando Brown. They did not. So good job by them. And then they go and they get Jawan Taylor, who is just 25 years old and was really good last year. He was a top 15 pass protector. I think you make the argument, and I would make the argument, I'd rather have him than Orlando Brown. So good job by them. They kept they also went out and got Charles Menahue, who played with San Fran last year and was very solid. So not a ton of moves there. They lose Juan Thornhill. They also, I should add, lost Frank Clark, which I don't think is that big of a loss. And Juju Smith-Schuster got overpaid by New England. So I like what the Kansas City Chiefs have done, as much as that pains me. Good. All credit goes to the doctor, the good doctor, Eric Eager. Brad, losers.
Yeah, for me, I think the biggest one that jumps out is Las Vegas Raiders. I mean, you basically pay Jimmy Garoppolo a little bit less in cash, but you give him the same guarantees that Derek Carr already had. It's a lateral move at best. I know he's your guy, but he's as good as Derek Carr, I think. And just cannot finish the season healthy. You then, if you do that, it's like, all right, then load up, get him a bunch of weapons, and see if you can try to, keep up with his arms race with Kansas City. Oh, never mind. We're going to trade Darren Waller for pick 100 to the New York Giants. I like Jacoby Myers, but now you have Hunter Renfrow, Jacoby Myers, and Devontae Adams. So, Myers can play outside. He can be your Z, but he's, played 2/3 of snaps in the slot in the past. Renfrow has played 90% of snaps, like 80+%. So, kind of a weird big splash to bring in another slot receiver. I like Marcus Epps, the safety, in a vacuum. I think he fits well opposite Javon Mayrig. You do different things there with those guys, but your defense is still going to be cheeks. You spent a bunch. Like I tried to say, I really thought Josh McDaniels was going to figure it out this time around. I thought he learned from his first go around in Denver. There's a guy, shout out this guy, I don't know his name, who comments every time I say something about Josh McDaniels. He comments, "How's that going? How you thought it was going to work well this year? How's that going?" It's not going well, my friend. Whoever that guy is, who I think has notifications set for at PFF Brad says McDaniels. It's not going well at all. I don't like their offseason. I think they're going to win 7 games and spend a bunch of money to do so.
You hate to see that, but we will not have any slander of Jimmy Garoppolo on this here podcast. He's going to be better than Derek Carr next year. Okay. Seth.
Well, I'm going to go with the Packers, and I know it's not like their fault per se, like as like a front office, but the whole situation has led them to not knowing what's going on with their roster, and they haven't done anything. So it's like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's not like this was a great roster last year, and you feel like, okay, well, we're good enough, and if Love plays okay, then no. I think they would have liked to do stuff if they had that. The money available from, not having, the Rodgers contract there anymore and all that stuff. So it's just not been a great start. Obviously, they have some clarity now. But with that said, you would have liked them to be in on some guys, and they have done nothing.
Yeah, it's a good point. And usually I take the stance that, doing not a lot in free agency is fine, right? But most teams don't have 60 mil going out the door. But they're in a tough position. And Brad, I was going to ask you this, like, what could they do? Because technically they have Rodgers on the books. So would they have been able to do much in free agency before a trade? Would that have forced their hand? How does that work? Because I agree, it's kind of that's maybe the hidden part of this Rodgers thing is like the Packers roster stinks.
Yeah, they are a bit hamstrung in what they can do while he's still on the books, which is, I guess, interesting because it kind of sounds like they're the ones that are hamstringing themselves. Mm-hmm. But they're also, look, Green Bay does not spend in free agency, never have, probably never will. They occasionally make a small move here and there, or, they went out and got Preston Smith and Zadarius Smith a couple years ago. But realistically, them and the Steelers, like I do charts on spending in free agency, and they're off the chart outliers of not doing anything. So I'm not super surprised by it, but I agree. Like their roster is not very good.
Yeah, it's but again, you stick to the process, and I think the process is sound. I just wonder if they would have acted a little bit different. This is a unique situation. They've had to the point. Most of those seasons, they've had a quarterback that they feel very confident in, who is one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL, who they're paying a ton of money. So that does dictate your move to some extent. A team, my first loser here, a team that does not have that is the New England Patriots. We just mentioned them. I don't really get the Juju thing. I just don't. I don't get I like James Robinson. I like Riley Reif. The Juju one to me, like, I just don't understand. I don't know what you're doing there. Like, you let Jacoby Myers go. He's probably better than Juju anyways. I don't know. So it wasn't as if they went out and spent way too much money on, good to decent players as they did a couple of years ago, but they still have a little bit of that going on. I don't know, man. It's a weird place to be for the Patriots. And I just don't think the team's going to be very good. Yet somehow will be good enough to be like the best fourth place team in the NFL, which is probably not a great place to be. Brad, any other losers to mention?
Who else can we pick on here? I think Arizona's trying to be bad, so I would almost call them like a loser, but it's probably a good thing they're a loser.
The Arizona Wildcats or the Cardinals?
Your Arizona Wildcats, no, but also the Cardinals. The Cardinals, they had Kaiser Whiting. It's a good move. Reunion with Jonathan Gannon. I don't know who is going to be playing in front of him on the defensive line. I off the top of my head, like Cam Thomas, the third round from last year. Like I don't even know who Myjai Sanders, I think, is on the team. I don't even know who their defensive line is right now. But I think it's kind of by design. You're just going to stay bad and figure things out long term. But so you can call them a loser. I think the Ravens, I think they're one of the only teams, if not the only team, that has not actually added a player yet. Talk about being hamstrung. That the franchise tag with Lamar obviously does not help with that big stamp on your books for $32.5 million. They cut Calais Campbell, who, maybe was making too much, but is a productive and solid veteran at this point. They're just, they haven't done anything.
Yeah. Another team kind of trying to figure out the quarterback situation. Seth, any others from you?
Well, I'll just talk about the Titans just because they're an interesting place where they've just swapped out players kind of like for like. You're losing a good player in David Long, who honestly could be like a top 10 linebacker. I think he's ascending in that, down that path, but you replace him with, so I'm like, okay, that's not good. But then you replace him with Azeez Al-Shaair, who is, I'm telling you, he's a really, really good linebacker who's going to explode this year, getting the snaps that he wasn't getting as a third linebacker in San Francisco. It's like, hey, you lose Nate Davis, but you bring in Daniel Brunskill. That's, probably Nate Davis is a little better, but it's like like for like, So it's like this type of weird situation where you brought in Arden Key, but you lost Bud Dupree. Like, it's just this like for like, where it's like, where are you going? And probably not very far, to be honest. But at least they haven't like it's like a net zero, I guess.
Can I real quick? I know he hasn't played a ton. Like they lose Nate Davis, who you talked about earlier for the Bears, and then gave Andre Dillard basically the same contract. Okay, you don't know? Okay.
I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, I just I get that he could play tackle in theory. I get their offensive line is maybe the worst offensive line in the NFL, so you have to do something. But I get he has the first round pedigree and all those things, and was stuck behind probably the best offensive line in football. But I was just like, is there something maybe Seth? It's buying low, or I don't know.
I think it's a buy low first round pedigree type of situation.
Those always work out. Yeah, those always work.
we got okay, let's do this. I think this will be cool. What I want you, we're gonna do some winners from the player side of things. And so these are, start with you, Brad, players who you think won. And I think you're in a great position to do this because you projected everyone through the exercise of projecting out the contracts for all these players. So which players won the most? And then we'll go to you, Seth, and you'll go from kind of the scheme perspective, which players won the most in terms of putting themselves in a position to have great seasons.
Yeah. So, I think Javon Hargrave, look, phenomenal player, but at 30 years old, getting 4 years, $84 million with $40 million in guarantees from the Niners is a great deal for him. Capitalizes on this market explosion at interior defensive line. And I think Draymond Jones and Zach Allen also fit that bill. For Draymond Jones to get over $17 million a year and for Zach Allen to get over $15 million a year. Look, they're good players. And yes, it's free agency, so teams overpay. But, just really, really big paydays. One more I'll throw in there and another Seth connection. But Caden Ellis, who after this signing, I literally went and watched, I think, his entire NFL career because it's a very small career. But played 600 snaps last year after playing like 150 total before that. Is a very good tweener backer, can rush the passer, can go back in coverage, and is not a liability by any means. But 3 years, $21 million, and like I said, he played 600 snaps last year after playing like 150 total. Very good cash for him. So that those guys all did very well.
I'll add with Javon Hargrave, who he grades super well, really good player. It's going to be interesting because I think that when we talk about the scheme fit, now for sure the 49ers needed another defensive tackle because we saw it in the NFC Championship game and we saw it. Teams are just picking on Kinlaw basically and whoever else was playing that position. Hargrave is not
remind me about Javon Kinlaw, please.
So you get an upgrade there, but it's like, well, my only concern is where do you play? I think you have neither him nor Eric Armstead are an interior in terms of the one technique, playing on the center type of player or inside the guard. They're more of outside the guard players. I think probably you can move guys around and you kind of have to be in today's NFL just based on how teams set their formation and things of that nature. So I do think it is overall a good idea. I just wonder if they're oh my God, we're all of a sudden we're really light in the middle because we don't have a true nose tackle type player. That would be my one concern, but I do think it's it's a great deal for him and it does address a quote unquote need for the 49ers. I'll add also, I know we've talked about this ad nauseum, but how can you not say great deal for the player with Daniel Jones? Because he's not a good football player and he's getting paid a lot of money. I'd say that's a pretty good deal for the player.
It's a good deal. Yeah, it's a good deal.
Can I ask you about this one, Seth? Because to me, it makes a ton of sense. And that is Jalen Ramsey in Miami over there. And with that defense and what Fangio would do and Howard on the other side, I think we're overlooking Ramsey a bit. I still think he's one of the, if not the best corner backs in the entire league. And to get some of the deal figured out there from a money perspective. But I just think the fit there is going to be fantastic.
I'm super curious about, if I'm not mistaken, they listed him as a safety, officially on the trade call or something like that. That's super interesting. I think we all assume that eventually Ramsey would make his way to safety because he's just such a good player. And eventually he would have that kind of Charles Woodson career where, okay, the legs weren't there anymore eventually, but he's such a smart, instinctive player that you can move him to safety and he'd have a good end of his career, but he's not 38. You know what I mean? So I'm very curious to see if they still do put him on the outside. I think that's still probably the best. And I also believe that I'm just, using body language here. So I'm not a psychologist. All right, people, but I look, I know you thought I am not a psychologist. However, I think that he was kind of checked out. And why not, right? The team was horrible. It was not, they just won the Super Bowl. The team ends up being terrible.
Yeah.
They can't do anything on offense, can't do anything on defense. Felt like he was a little checked out. Felt like he was guessing a lot on defense. I think an invested Jalen Ramsey has a chance to be that same Jalen Ramsey we've seen. And then this is a huge pick. And like I said, even adding David Long, a guy who knows how to play, really good zone defender, really good run defender, but really good in zone, which they're going to switch to with Fangio there. That's a big switch for them going from all that man coverage to this Fangio zone stuff. So I think those are two really, really good and important players for them.
Yeah, everyone wants to talk about Trayvon Diggs and Stephon Gilmore being like the best, cornerback duo, and you got the Eagles cornerback duo and all that. I will take the Dolphins cornerback duo. I think those dudes are really good. And we should not forget, from a safety perspective, by the way, Javon Holland on the back end there, who has been one of the better young defensive players that we've seen. Another plug for the PFF NFL draft guide, which the only reason I knew Javon Holland was going to be good is because I read that thing. So you should go get yourself. The new version 2, just came out on Monday. Bunch of new advanced data in there, grades across different facets for players, as well as combine data. You can get it on pff.com, and then go click on draft and draft guide and get your copy right now. Okay, so let's close out here with a few things. There's a little report by Adam Schefter. He's maybe a little frazzled. He retweeted Brad last night. So that points to the frazzledness. Aaron Rodgers told him to lose his number in the darkness. And so now he's coming on NFL Live. And the quote is, I think Bryce Young is to the Panthers what Mac Jones was to the 49ers when they traded up. There's a lot of different ways to interpret this, but I think, Brad, you hit the nail on the head. So what do you make of this statement about the Panthers?
Yeah, how I view it is, I think that it is legitimate when it comes out that Carolina would trade down. I don't think they actually will, but that they would trade down, that they don't have a one target in mind that they've fallen in love with, that they must have. And it's more of we are now comfortable with one of these guys. And the Bryce Young, Mac Jones specifically is, if no one wows us from now until then, if we don't go to a pro day and see a Zach Wilson crossbody throw that just makes us, shiver up our spines, and we'll just take Bryce Young and just play it safe, and he's a good high floor prospect. But if a CJ Stroud, for example, or if an Anthony Richardson is great on the whiteboard and has a good pro day and all these things, then we are comfortable going that route as well. I think it's true. I think it makes sense. I think the buzz is real that they have not identified one particular player as of today. I said last podcast, I now have bets on both guys at plus 300, but I still would think that they go CJ Stroud. I think it will be CJ Stroud. But, I also don't hate the strategy. Just talking from Carolina, people might say, oh, it's so dumb. Why would you go all the way to number 1 if you don't have a single target in mind? I get that. But Arizona maybe kind of was playing hardball and overplayed their hand a little bit, and so Carolina just said, "Okay, we'll just control this entire draft." I don't hate the strategy, even if I get why people might think it's a little bit weird.
So, do you think that they'd be amenable to actually trading down? I still can't understand how you go all the way up to 1. They give up a lot for number 1, and I think that I would really have, if they got a good deal for number 1, I could see it, but they gave up a ton for number 1, and you could have just tanked and maybe legitimately got to 1 next year. It's hard in that division, but where there's a will, there's a way. Do you think they could really actually trade down now?
Here's what I'm thinking. I may have already said this, but it's basically, to me, it's okay. Houston, we're going to talk to Indy and try our hardest to get Indianapolis to trade up with us and jump ahead of you. And we think they're going to take Bryce Young. And I know I sort of hinted at it. I think Lance Zierlein said the quiet part out loud about the entire agent pairing of CJ Stroud and how maybe the Texans do not want to take him for those reasons. So I think that's what it is. Basically, hey, there's a team in your division, Houston, that's sitting at 4 that didn't want to trade with Chicago. Maybe we'll give them a little bit of a better deal. If you don't come up with us to take Bryce Young number 1 overall, you might get jumped. And then we know you're not going to take CJ, or we think you're not going to take CJ. And then we can get one of Stroud or Richardson at 4, maybe go back up to 3 and just really get crazy and just make a million trades. I just don't think it's actually going to work. I think at the end of the day, they'll stay. But I think it's a worthwhile exercise to try to get Houston to panic and just get something in return and maybe still get your guy anyway.
Seth, you are the quarterback coach, GM, head coach, whatever it is, of a terrible franchise. You have an opportunity to draft one quarterback in this class. Who is it? And would you rather have a quarterback in the next class? And if so, who would those be?
No, I think I would stick with Bryce Young. And I think it's just, if you're drafting at this position, like a lot of guys fail at this position. Most guys fail in general when they get to the professional level in whatever sport. So I think you just got to go kind of balls to the wall and take the guy who I believe, and I think a lot of other people too believe, is probably one of the smarter playmaking type of prospects we've seen in a long time, and that's Bryce Young. I don't see, like, I get the issues. I'm not saying like he's not, what is he, 5'6", 125 or whatever he weighed in at, but like I get that, and we haven't seen a quarterback that small survive in the NFL. I get it. But it's like, well, other guys don't survive. The Paxton Lynches don't survive either. So like, let's go out and get this guy. Let's go all out for him, and let's take Bryce Young. I still think that, to me, he projects based on his on the field stuff as like the best quarterback. I do love Caleb Williams coming out next year, but I'd still take Bryce Young over him right now.
Wow. By the way, right now on FanDuel, CJ Stroud -220, Bryce Young is +250. So you've done nicely, Brad, to have 3-1 for both those guys. Anthony Richardson is +350. My belief, and Will Levis is 30-1. My belief, and I think the Will Levis 30-1 signals this a bit. I think the teams right now are looking and going, you know what, let's not talk these guys up more than we need to. Like, let's just wait. The guys next year are awesome. We don't need to overspend this year. By the way, Jalen Carter is still actually listed here. Shocking to me after seeing his pro day. Like, I think, Brad, if we put you in the defensive line drill there, you'd have more agility than Jalen Carter.
We looked about the same with our shirts off, but I think I would have gotten through the bags with a little bit more finesse. My lateral agility. I will say though, his legal situation seems to be done. He entered a no contest to the charges, which basically usually signals like he made an agreement with the prosecutors, and they probably will put it all to bed. But yeah, now the bigger issue is, the reports they didn't even finish the positional drills, did not do any of the testing, and looked like me after Jeff Ruby's steak with his tarp off. So
I was going to say he just ate the prosecution.
I wonder. I might be galaxy braining this, but I wonder if the Seahawks signing 2 interior defensive players was kind of a signal saying like, hey, it's not going to be Jalen Carter. Like, now you could still draft Jalen Carter because, if he is that type of player, a top 5 player, then he just gets on the field, whatever. But, them going out and getting Draymond Jones and, kind of bringing back Jan Reed, who they used to have, used to be a Seahawk, maybe signals that it's, if they stay there, they don't take a quarterback, then it would be Will Anderson, or maybe, Tyree Smith or Tyree Wilson or something like that.
I think it's a good point.
He's still 5-1 to be the first defensive player selected. But man, that was not impressive. I don't know. I don't see the first defensive. I guess they probably won't do defensive tackle. It'd be defensive line, and they'd probably include Anderson and Wilson. But I was wondering if you get some value on Kalijah to go ahead of him. Would be interesting. By the way, Brad, what was your order at Jeff Ruby's? What'd you go with?
Oh, I went with the I forget what the name is, but I'm a big bone-in guy. If you're not getting a bone-in steak, I don't know what you're doing.
Yeah,
I think it was a ribeye, a nice bone-in ribeye.
The cowboy.
Thank you. Say it again.
The cowboy.
Yeah, probably the cowboy. That sounds right.
There we go. My guy. Yeah, the cowboy is the way to go. If you're not going bone-in at a steakhouse, like, what are you doing?
I will say this too. This might offend some people. If you're going to a nice steakhouse, look, if you're going to Outback, do whatever you want. Maybe just don't go to Outback. But
just don't go to Outback.
Yeah, just don't go to Outback. If you're ordering if you're ordering medium or above at a nice steakhouse, I'm judging you a little. I'll admit it. I'm judging you a little. Like again, if it's a cheaper place, do whatever you want. But you want a nice rare piece of meat. I mean, you want that thing to be pumping a little bit still. You want the blood flowing.
Just don't order the steak, right? Like that's my thing. It's like just don't put on this facade. You want it. You want it. I agree with you. And people will argue like medium is fine. In what world is medium fine? Medium is not fine. And if that's like, don't tell me you enjoy it. Just order the fish. Get the chicken. Save
get the salmon.
$30.
Just get the salmon.
Yeah, there's some nice farmed salmon. Okay.
You can, yeah.
Ooh, so there was supposed to be okay. So Seth just broke some news in the chat to us. That's why we're making these faces. Apparently, Jimmy Garoppolo failed his physical. There was supposed to be a press conference today, and I saw Chahrouri of The Athletic was like, I reached out to a PR person about why it's not happening anymore and didn't get a response back. I guess now we know.
I don't know for sure. I just in the ethers spoke to me, so I don't know.
Wait. You don't know. You're breaking news that isn't true, or this is true.
I was given this information, and I just wanted to pass it along to you guys.
Okay. So would this be not recovered from foot injury? That has to be what this is, right?
Yes. So there's videos they're putting out of him dapping up teammates and in the building and saying how cool the facility is. But like I just said, the tweet from Tashawn Reed was Jimmy Garoppolo has not officially signed. They agreed to terms Monday, but the transaction is not complete. Then Jeff Howe, also The Athletic, regarding Jimmy Garoppolo's postponed news conference, source with knowledge said the situation is all good. Doesn't sound there's any issues with finalizing the deal, just a postponement. But, that would be an interesting potential thing as you fail a physical. I would imagine you circle back and see if you can pass one later, but that's interesting.
But wouldn't you like if this is not like me going to the army as like a low level person, right? And I fail a physical and they're like, no, you got to go home. This is like who Jimmy Garoppolo is, right? You know the injury. Yeah. So I find that would be interesting if this was true, that they were like, actually, we forgot. Oh, you didn't finish? That was Brock Purdy in there? Oh, I'm sorry.
that was the other guy. Usually the case is it would be something else that's not, like you said, like they know you have an issue with this specific injury. Yeah. Generally would be like, for example, Larry Ogunjobi was the big one last year with the Bears, agrees to a big contract, and his was like, I think he had a Liz Frank issue that they did not know about, or I don't know, because he had a foot injury in Cincinnati. So I don't know. Maybe it looked worse than they thought it was going to. I don't know. It's a fair question. I don't know. I guess they're no longer my free agency losers anymore. So we got to redo the whole
maybe
pod.
The Raiders, maybe he just didn't make it out of Sapphire in time. I've known that to cause failed physicals in the past.
He's going to fail a lot of Monday morning physicals with a hangover. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. All right, let's transition nicely into getting out of here. Brad has promised to redeem me for the Arizona Wildcats bowing out here. So we have some games starting. Oral Roberts Duke is starting very shortly here. Brad, NCAA tourney, who you got?
Yep, game right after Oral Roberts, which I think just tipped off, is Boise State Northwestern. I like Boise State +2. Northwestern sneaks their way into the big dance, but the down year for the Big Ten, just, they had Purdue, who's a wagon, obviously a 1 seed, but Michigan was meh. Ohio State, I don't think as good as their record indicates. Penn State, I don't like. I actually also like Texas A&M. I gave that out, I think last week. I gave out Texas A&M before we even knew the spread. They're -2.5. So 2 plays for you there. 2 small spreads. I like Boise State +2, and I like Texas A&M at 10 p.m. -2.5.
10 p.m., baby. Oh, God, Pacific time is so wonderful. Seth, you got those? Wrote them down?
I've already bet them. It's happening.
Seth, we always appreciate you. At PFF_Seth, at PFF_Brad. Follow them. Don't follow me. Follow them. They're great. Oh, and join the PFF Printing Press Discord to make sure that you get the most up-to-date news on anything that's happening and bets that are available. We will be back. Arjun will be with us on Sunday. Enjoy the tourney. Try not to pick any losers. Love y'all. Peace.